everyone, it's Helen here from Bodywork-Pilates, and here is another September Strong in 6. So we're going to run through a couple of movements that we've done before, shoulder bridge and backstroke, both of which we're going to use to mobilise and to just remind ourselves of where we need to be on our mat. And then we're going to do a couple of exercises that are going to challenge our stability and strength. And at that point, we need to become even more aware of the stability and the stillness around our low back. So when we get into position, we'll be lying down. If when we add weight into the movement, you feel your back doing this kind of thing and being pulled and arched, then you're not strong enough to do this particular movement, in which case you'll need to drop down, do some of the other things, do a little bit more of the basic work. So be mindful of that. If you find that it's just a little bit of an effort to maintain the natural curve of the spine when we do this, is where ideally we would like to be, then just by a fraction, just drop, it's almost like a paper thickness at a time, just drop your lower back down a little bit until you feel that you're able to stabilise that. What you don't want to do is to immediately jam your back in. We don't want to go into a full deep imprint, but you do want to try and keep, as best you can, the natural arch of the spine. So we'll talk about that more when we get to it, but initially we'll start just with a little bit of mobilisation. We take ourselves carefully down to the mat, ensuring that we have our feet and our knees hip distance apart. The shoulders are wide, the back of the neck is long. When you look up, be looking up and slightly forward rather than looking up and looking back, which might indicate we need to do some work to release the neck and on your upper body posture. So ideally looking slightly forward over the tops of the knees, that sort of direction. Take a moment to find the natural curve of your back. So this is what I was talking about before. We want a level pelvis where the pubic bone, the hip bones, the navel all rest level, where the ribs are soft, rather than feeling that we're pressing our back down, going straight into an imprint, which is where we will be in a moment for shoulder bridge. But we definitely don't want to feel that anything that we do with our legs, any movements, cause us to be pulled and to pull these bony landmarks at the front edge of the body away from each other. So be mindful of that, but we will start with shoulder bridge. So the feet and the knees hip distance, hands palm down, shoulders wide, back of the neck long. Lift up through the muscles of the inner thigh, connected to pelvic floor, and then move into your imprint. So tipping that bowl of water over the chest, applying some downward pressure through the feet and peeling along to the base of the shoulder blades. No movement in the head, no pressure through the neck. Breath in, those glutes should be active, and then as you breathe out, melt it back down again, imprinting back down, feeling that low back really place itself down to the floor. Release the spine, return to neutral, that level position. Same thing, as you breathe out, draw the low back down, drawing up through inner thighs, pelvic floor, the feet are firm, legs wrap, glutes engage. Ribs are softened, breastbone is soft. Take a breath in as you breathe out. Think of elongating, lengthening the spine away. Let's do 2 more of those. You, of course, could do this more than once. You could do more of these. You could pause it when you want to, if you feel you need to do a few more of everything. We're just getting a feeling of just mobilising the spine, starting to work into some strength in the back line of the body. And we'll do that again. So again, not initially pressing too firmly into the feet, but rolling the spine first, starting to peel, then pressing down in order to continue that rolling action just to the base of the shoulder blades, keeping the breastbone, the ribcage soft, a breath in, and then a melt all the way back down. Release the spine back to the natural curve, keep the pelvis very still, keep the ribs softened, and extend away with the arm and the opposite leg into backstroke, a small gap between the heel and the floor, a small gap between the hand and the floor. So once again, we want to make sure that as we extend away, we don't pull these bony landmarks away. We don't get this feeling of being pulled out of our position. We have now our slight corset, our applied corset. Noticing perhaps that as we take that natural wrapping corset sensation around the centre of the body, that the body might add an automatic connection as well. So you might also notice that when your body recognises it needs a little bit more stability or support, that it adds into your applied corset. So I call it applied and automatic, to to try and differentiate between the two. So we'll do that a couple more times. We're looking for the stillness. So it's not about the movement of the arm and the leg, it's about the stillness of the torso. It's about the softness of the ribs, the constant distance between the ribs and the hips. And I was talking, I've lost count, so we'll do one more on each side. I may have already said that. But as everybody knows, Pilates teachers cannot count. And bringing it back to centre this time. Okay, we are in our neutral position. We have this distance constant through the front edge of the body. We've applied our corset. As you breathe out, float your right knee to tabletop. So that's your upright thigh, about 90 degrees at the shin, bringing the shin around about parallel to the floor or the ceiling. Keeping that slight corset and without being pulled, just as you breathe out, float your left knee alongside. If that's not for you, don't do it. Taking great care as you now place the right foot back down, it gets increasingly heavy as it gets towards the floor, and then the left. So the heaviest portion of this movement is not lifting the first leg to tabletop, although you need to be very aware of what's going on, but it's the lift of the second leg. So if I start with the left leg, so as I breathe out, I'm going to float my left knee to tabletop. So I've got my upright thigh, I've got about 90 degrees at the shin, my pelvis is level and still. Pay particular attention now to what happens to your applied corset and notice whether there's any automatic addition to that. So keeping the weight through the back of the pelvis without being pulled forward, notice the weight as you float that right leg alongside. So now you should really be aware of that connection that wraps around the centre of the body. Now from here it gets heavy again as we place the first leg, the left foot, back down to the floor. The closer it gets to the floor, the heavier it becomes. The more inclined you are to be pulled, so control that and then replace the second. So that's where the most of the weight is. So let's do that a couple more times. Maintaining the natural curve of the low back, that light wrapping corset, that release around the ribs. Remember, we keep the breath in the rib cage. Don't let the corset affect the breath. As you breathe out, you're floating the right knee above the right hip. Staying balanced to the back of the pelvis, softening the back down to the floor a little if you need to, otherwise maintaining your neutral spine as you float the left leg alongside, maintaining the same position of the spine as you float the right leg back down, and then the left. And we'll do it one more time, starting with the left leg. So floating up, being prepared for the extra weight, relax those shoulders. Doesn't matter if it takes you a moment or two. Float the second leg alongside. Be prepared for the extra weight as the first foot gets really close to the floor, and then down. So if you found that really challenging, then just stick with that. Don't move on to what we're going to do next, which is our final little exercise. Just practice that basic fundamental move first. If that was really challenging, then you need to do some more basic fundamental work. Okay, so what we're going to add on to here, little heel touches. So we need to be back in that tabletop position. The shoulders are relaxed, we float the first leg. We're prepared because we know what we're expecting. We're prepared for the second leg to come up. And then from here, a little flex of the feet. So just pull the toes up to the ceiling. Keeping the thighs as they are, just going to let one foot heel touch down and then come back up. What tends to happen is, as the foot goes down, the other knee pulls back because that offloads some of the weight. Okay? So we keep the upright thigh, we only move one thigh forward, the other leg stays exactly where it is, we lift it back up and then change. I sometimes like to encourage people to put their hands against the thighs so that they can feel if the leg pushes back into them. So just placing the palms against the thigh, you move the hand away from the thigh, the other thigh doesn't pull in, and change. And again, notice what you have to do here. Notice where you might be putting tension. Are you starting to get a little tense around the shoulders, around the jaw? Are your abdominals struggling to maintain their corset? It's only a tiny touch to the floor. It's nothing more than that. Tiny touch, and then all the way back up. Hug the knees in, give your back a little bit of a stretch. Okay, feet one and then the other back down to the floor, rolling over to the side, pushing through the hands, and you're back up to seated. So there you go, a little bit of an extra weight addition to our exercises, but as I say, and I've said it a couple of times already, I understand I'm repeating myself, but I want to make sure that you completely understand. If that feels too heavy, do not do it. Go back to the fundamentals. If you've got any questions, then just drop me a message or drop it on the underneath of this video. I'll see you soon. Take care.